So delighted to be joined by Ray Connellan. Ray, it's been a tough all year, I suppose, for everyone, not just in Ireland, across the world. How have you found it?
Yeah, I suppose kind of the same as everyone else. Trying to keep myself as busy as possible, and I suppose trying to just keep occupied is the main thing. I think the first lockdown during the summer wasn't really too bad with the good weather, but I think this year, at the start of 2021, it's a little bit tougher to try and I suppose stay motivated that we're gonna I suppose see the end of this.
Yeah, I mean, from a sporting side, it probably wasn't too bad because at least we did get a club championship and we did get the inter-county season as well.
Yeah, it was great. I actually really enjoyed getting back into the club. Having been away for so long, not really getting a proper club season. It was nice to have a decent portion of the year kind of closed off just for the club, which was really enjoyable. And I suppose the best thing about playing county football was that when the club finished, we still had something to do and something to train for. And it was nice that we got to get a run out in the championship as well. Albeit just the one game, but it was still nice, I suppose, for the 6 or 8 weeks leading into it. A lot of my mates were at home with nothing to do, and I was still able to go training 3 times a week and play matches. So it was a silver lining, definitely. It was so boring and a bit of a miserable year, but no, it was good to have sports kind of distract me.
Yeah, because the club championship, it seemed like a lot of people thought it was one of the best in many years because I suppose all the players were together the whole time. There was no distraction with the inter-county. Everyone knew that was starting in October. So would you be in favour of, I suppose, the split season being talked about a lot, that the club gets that, we'll say, half the year and the inter-county as the other half?
Yeah. I think it's something I'd really enjoy. As a county player, you're lucky you're getting the best of both. Where you get to go play county and then come back playing club. But I suppose for the guys who are only playing club, they definitely feel like they're playing second fiddle to the county players. They're playing off someone else's schedule in a way. So the fact that this year kind of showed that you can have a split season was great. And I love playing my club because they're obviously the mates that you have growing up. So yeah, no, I definitely prefer if we got more time to play a club. I think if it came down to a choice of one of them had to go, say if it was to do with COVID, and one of them had to go, I think I'd nearly prefer just playing club football. Um, but yeah, no, it was good. It was good to see that you could do the split season, and I think a lot of the lads, both county and club players, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, because you can even see nowadays that the club's training, it's not at the inter-county standard, obviously, or level, but it's becoming more high level and more trainings, more gym work being put in, and the club championship is thriving because of that as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of the club players now you're starting to see them kind of train in line with what inter-county players train with. I suppose there's a bit of a kind of a drip down of professionalism from I suppose how far sports are advancing now these days in Ireland, and it drips in from rugby and soccer and from maybe I suppose from the AFL connection too with Gaelic football. That guys are kind of I suppose seeing the benefits in looking after yourself off the field in terms of kind of gym and strength and conditioning. I think then that the county scene is kind of dripping in bits of, I suppose, wisdom into training and with the club scene as well. So guys are bringing back in new drills and stuff like that. So yeah, no, I definitely think that the average kind of club player now is kind of more kind of finely tuned athlete and a better footballer than what we would have seen before. And it's a benefit to kind of everyone because the standard just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, we'll move on to Westmeath. I mean, you came into the panel probably young enough as well, but I mean, there's one game that I always remember with Westmeath, and it was the last day, was that Meath semi-final in Croke Park, was it
Yeah.
2015? Like, probably the rivalry, is it that big? Because I know Westmeath haven't beaten, was that the first time in Championship that you'd beaten Meath?
Yeah, that was the first time ever that we beat
Yeah.
Meath in championship. I couldn't tell you how many games there's been, but yeah, no, it was the first time in our history that we've beaten them in a championship game. So the rivalry, I suppose, has kind of dwindled a little bit over the years. Is just maybe as a result of one or the other teams not being competitive at the same time. Um, but I still think when it comes down to a game day, you do notice a difference when you're playing Meath, particularly on a big day like up in Croke Park in the Leinster semi-final. Um, the overheads around the county, the supporters that would have kind of maybe in their 40s, 50s, and 60s now would really kind of you'd hear them jeering up an awful lot more than what they might be for just another Leinster game. So yeah, to go out on that day and I suppose to perform the way we did in the first half, which was so poor, and then it's chalk and cheese. We came out in the second half and we blitzed them, and it was it was a special day. I think a lot of the guys would kind of have that down as one of their best memories in a Westmeath jersey.
Yeah, because you said there, like when you were, I don't know, was it 10-11 down in that first half, like you're probably thinking, oh, here we go again, and you might get, I don't know, backlash or anything, but you'd be disappointing yourselves that you haven't put up a performance. But what was actually said at half time was it just to go at them? Because it seemed like even Kieran Martin was wearing number 6 that day, I think, and he had scored 2-3. It was just like he kept going at them in that second half.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it we changed around, I suppose, roles a little bit. Kieran was playing centre back, and like Kieran's probably more natural forward. Like he wouldn't really be a centre back as such. I suppose we were trying to use him as more of an attacking option from centre back, and I feel that may have just left us a small bit open in the middle. And I think Meath using their pace, where like they've got the two brothers there, the Wallace brothers, who were just so quick. And they were able to just kind of counter holes that we weren't filling, and they racked up a pretty decent score. So we made a few changes. We put Kieran in into the full forward line, where he's like just massively dangerous. He's such a big, strong man that if he gets a ball with 21 yards out, he beats his first man so easily that he then opens up space for everyone else. So he was able to rattle off kind of 2 or 3 goals there in the second half, I think. Yeah, I suppose we just kind of realised that we have nothing to lose going out in the second half. That was the big thing that was said. There's absolutely no reason that we shouldn't just throw the shackles off and go at them. Like, what's the harm in losing by 20 points? Like, if we go out here and we don't give it a go, we'll regret it. So I think that was the kind of chat in the second half. I think when you're in that position, you can afford to just kind of like throw the shackles off and be like, right, lads, let's have a real crack at this and see where it takes us. And then I suppose as the scores started coming, momentum started growing, the crowd started filling into the stadium, I suppose, for the next game as well. So the energy was kind of going with us. And once that starts happening, from a Meath perspective, it's extremely difficult to stop a team when they're getting that momentum and getting that buzz. I think we just built off it. Every score that went over, we were cheering, we were getting each other going. And the more the energy built, the kind of, I suppose, the better we got. And we ended up seeing it out by maybe, I think it was 4 points in the end. So it was brilliant, kind of a good way of showing that you can just kind of put the head down and turn the game on its head in half an hour.
Yeah, because it was a typical championship match, and even the atmosphere, it's probably that pure adrenaline rush towards the end. You hear the crowd, and you see these scores going over it, and you know probably that you knew you had Meath's best nearly, because they just weren't coming back at you.
Yeah, there was 1 or 2 kind of close calls. They kind of went in on goal, well, close to going in on goal a couple of times. I remember for our last goal, they broke down they were coming down the right hand side of the field, and we had 3 men back, and Jamie Gnu turned it over, popped to me. I think it was a 1-2 with Paddy Holloway, and it ended up getting up to John Heslin, and like you're kind of just thinking, put it over the bar, like just see it out. And like typical Hess, like he just like he went straight for the goal. And once that went in, like we were just here. I think we've done this. Like we've managed to pull it back. So it's one that lives with me, and I think it's one that lives with all the boys as well. Like we all remember that one big time.
Yeah, so you get the buzz of that, and then obviously a Leinster final is a huge occasion, but it's against the all-conquering Dublin. Like, how do you? I mean, you've played Dublin a few times now, back-to-back Leinster finals. Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I've been asked this question like an awful lot. It's probably one of the more common questions you get asked, like as a Leinster, another footballer in Leinster outside of Dublin. At the minute, they're so far ahead. There's not really much you can do. It's a little bit of kind of damage limitation in terms of you don't want them getting a run on you too early, because it can turn into a rout, and if they do that, like you can end up with a cricket score. I think we've seen that before. Like I remember my brother playing against Dublin one year. I think they were about like 28 points or something, and one of the years I was away, it was something similar. So for us, it's more a case of trying to keep things tight. Don't concede too much too early, and just give yourself a position where you're within touching distance coming into the last 15 minutes. Which is, I suppose, it's a bit sad. It's a bit annoying that that's kind of the case, but it just is like it's just the way things are. And then I suppose for players, you just know that you're going up against probably the best player in the position in the country. So you really just want to show what you're capable of, and you want to see if you can mix it with the best teams in the country, because I suppose with the way the championship format is at the minute, oftentimes it can be, one and done and then maybe a qualifier game. So you don't often get the chance to be on the big stage against the best team. So you need to kind of like live for that moment and really try and seize it and just, I suppose, make the most of the opportunity. So that's what a lot of guys do. They'll go out there to try and beat their man, and just, I suppose, show that they're at a level where they can compete with what's thought to be one of the best teams of all time. But at the minute, they're so far ahead that the result is it's almost inevitable before the game starts, which is I know it could be frowned upon saying as a player who will end up playing against them again, but that's just the way things are at the minute.
Yeah, and probably the problem is that Dublin can win any sort of game. If you want to go toe to toe with them, they'll go that way. And if you want to put 14 men behind the ball, they'll be patient. They have the experience, and they nearly enjoy that at times as well. Just nearly passing it back to side, waiting for the perfect moment, and that is the problem probably with them.
Yeah, but they've been so long together with a very structured coaching regime that they've got plays, they've got set pieces, and they've got plans to combat whatever kind of opposition things to throw at them. There's nothing that an opposition will bring now that Dublin haven't faced multiple times before. Dublin is as guilty as anyone is putting men behind the ball, but they're very efficient at then breaking and counter-attack. They're also so good at when they do have to slow the ball down. They've got little set plays where they'll move the ball over and back, and they will use the full width of the field, and they'll slowly start bringing opposition players from, I suppose, the centre of the ground. You'll see the gaps opening up and the defence kind of starting to spread. And then they've got a line of maybe 6 or 7 runners. You've got your Fenton, McCarthy, Smalls, Kieran Kilkenny, Butler. Like, these guys now, they loop around, they come out, and then all of a sudden they're punching holes through. And, it's something that's very, very, it's coming, but it's just very hard to defend against because they move so well and so efficiently. So they've a few set plays that you'd see if you were to analyse their games where, they're very good. It's almost like basketball style, the way they play. They come and they set screens to free men up, and it's very clever and it's very difficult to play against. And it's just down to years of being together and years of being coached at an extremely high level, So I suppose it's the benefits of having a manager that stays on the one side for so long. It allows these things to grow. So it's difficult to play. It can be quite frustrating at times.
Yeah, I mean, there has been a lot of talk about the Leinster Championship, and people throw back that Tipperary and Cavan won provincial titles this year, although it is rare that just happened on the same day, because if you look at the last decade, you could probably only say Monaghan and Roscommon were the only half shocks that happen with provincial wins. Like, what do you want to see happen?
Well, what happened in like Ulster and I suppose even like down in Munster with Cork and Kerry, and like that will not happen in Leinster for the next 10 years. Dublin, you can write off the Leinster Championship as a competition for the next, at least, it's 5 years definitely, 10 years, at the outset. And we're starting to see that happen with the All-Ireland as well. It's the thing, I suppose. My brother he started with an open letter after the Meath game, the Dublin game. But I suppose as a concerned kind of GAA fan, he just addressed the issue of funding and how it was leaving Leinster Championship in a state of, I suppose, disrepair, and it was about to turn the All-Ireland into the same. I personally would prefer to see the championship turn into more of a league format. I think the league is the best competition at the minute, and I think there are motions being put in place that will have to go to Congress around what the championship is going to look like this year, I believe. And one of the options is championship as a league format. And I've looked at the fixtures and how it would work out. There's I think there's over a 500% increase in number of games that every team is going to play, and you're going to be playing against oppositions of a more even number as yourself. Whereas those mismatches between, like say the likes of ourselves and Offaly, Laois, or whoever, and Dublin meeting in Leinster. Like if you get Dublin the first round of Leinster, you can pretty much write off your inter-county season. So I would prefer to see a rejig of the structure in terms of can we turn our championship into a league format. It might affect the provincials in terms of the substance that they carry, but I just think for in terms of competition and in terms of playing games, that would be having a championship season where some guys are only going to play 2 games a year in championship. And I mean, if you look at the talent that ends up getting wasted there, it's quite frustrating to see. Like you've got players in counties such as like Emlyn Mulligan from like Leitrim, who'd walk into any team in the country on his day when he was playing. And how many days do we really get to see him show his worth? And there's countless other examples of guys like that who are just endlessly talented, but because of the way our championship season is structured, they never get to do it at stage really, which is a bit of a shame. And I suppose in terms of Leinster, then we just have a massive problem. Which one team has been designed to win over a number of years. The thing I don't like before I say this isn't like an anti-Dublin thing. This is not a Dublin passion commentary or narrative. This is a problem that Dublin had where Gaelic football was dying in the capital, and like they should, they reinvested and remodeled the structures in Dublin so that Gaelic football could grow where it needed to, and it needed to grow in the capital. It's the most populous area in the country. So without football there, GA is at risk of kind of dying everywhere else. So that's grand, you fund Dublin and you really grow the game and you turn it into almost a professional sport at county level. And then you get hundreds of thousands of kids playing all across Dublin, and you get games development officers and player officers coming into clubs as full-time employment to do this. So the game is naturally going to grow, and it's shown like it's a perfect template of what happens when you invest properly in something that's already there. And I would like to see the same urgency be placed on every other county around Leinster and countrywide, because we've seen it works in Dublin. We have Dublin now as the example of this works. So why not invest urgently in this? And we've seen comments made by the Leinster chairman recently, Pat T, about how I think along the lines of it's kind of up to everyone else to work harder and catch up. And as far as I'm concerned, that's just like it's just words. Like it means nothing. I mean, if you think that every other county isn't trying to catch up with it, so he has an example of exactly how to fix it, and I look into Dublin, really address it and bring that same template and bring it into the other counties to some extent, because at the minute we don't really have an answer and we're very quickly running out of competition.
Yeah, is it even probably the game, as you mentioned there, it's probably the games issues as well in the summer, because you said there most counties will only get 2 games and they're playing the bulk of their games at the start of the year. I mean, they brought in the Super 8s, but again, that only strengthens the likes of the Dublin. If say a Roscommon comes up against a Dublin in a knockout quarter-final, you never know, but realistically, Dublin are not going to get knocked out of a group of 4.
No, yeah, that was just supposed to go on the Super 8s. The better teams got more games, which is kind of not what we need as smaller teams. And yeah, the number of games, I think like Gaelic football is one of the worst sports in terms of like your games to training ratios. Like you train 100 times a year, you might play 5 games, and it's the same at club level. Club players, they'd be fed up with that too. Excuse me. So yeah, no, I think the number of games, this new format Congress for the championship as a league format, you'll notice the number of games like obviously will increase, and what happens then is teams benefit more. The lower level teams have actually got a chance to improve, because if you look at the leagues this year and how good they were, in terms of, like, you know, Division 2 was so competitive. Every game was a cracker. Um, so if you have your championship based off those standings where you've got Division 2 teams going head to head every weekend to qualify into an All-Ireland competition, and, you know, you've got the same thing happening for Division 3 and 4, you're only going to see teams improve because they will be able to go out on a Saturday and play a game on a Sunday. They'll come back into training on Tuesday or Wednesday evening and review that game. And then whatever they review, they can work on then Thursday before going into a game on the Saturday, Sunday again. And that's the way all professional sports work. You know, you've got such a set routine. It allows guys to kind of, I suppose, get into a rhythm of games and training and learning from mistakes and learning from positives. So it's the way professional sport works. And with the level GA has gone to now, I don't understand why it's not kind of what we're looking at now. Because aside from everything else, then in terms of how teams will benefit, it also gives individuals a chance to plan their year better. And I suppose you've got guys with kids, you've got guys who want to go on holidays and all this type of stuff. You've got a set year. You've got, you know, 10 games in a row for 10 games in 12 weeks or 13 weeks, you know. People will talk about burnout, but you won't notice a lot more difference between the amount of guys are training. You know, like if guys are training 3 days a week to play, and they might only train twice in a weekend to play match at the weekend, it'll balance out. And you won't really have to worry about guys getting burnt out really or anything like that, because training alone will come down, match intensity goes up, and we kind of just balance out then in the middle. So I think I'd love to do that because let's play more games. I suppose it's Gaelic football. That's all we want to do is play as much games as possible.
Yeah, because you did see with the division you were in just last year, Division 2. I mean, Clare had a chance to go up on the last day and nearly ended up getting relegated. It was that tight.
Yeah, Division 2 was this year. It was a good division to be a part of. I think a lot of people were actually quite interested in it because I think Division 1, you know, you've got the few top boys, and then everyone's like, Dublin are going to win it. So people kind of just maybe don't watch it. People don't, I suppose, care about it quite as much in the greater sense of the country unless you're involved. Whereas I think Division 2 was just so competitive. Guys were kind of looking at, like, what's going on down here? Like, these lads, there's teams like that could get, as you said, get relegated on the last day or go up on the last day. So it was exciting to be a part of. You know, it was my first year back playing football, so to be involved in competitive football that competitive was really enjoyable. So yeah, no, I really enjoyed the Division 2 this year. And I suppose that kind of strengthened my feeling of kind of thinking, you know, if this was marketed in the right way, and if it was structured as championship, you know, if it got all the bells and whistles that the championship format gets, moved a little bit later into the year where it's all on the pitches, it's in the summer, a few games in Croke Park. You know, if you're playing in the county grounds, even you can have county ground could have 10 or 15,000 people coming to watch a game. And I mean, how does that not benefit smaller counties around the country? I mean, if you're telling me that, you know, Westmeath are going to have, say last year, who's got like Armagh and Cavan, then Laois back to back in Cusack Park over the course of 3 weeks, and it was our championship structure. Like, I just think it'd be brilliant. Like, you'd have so much opportunity there in terms of raising money for your respective counties. So I love it. And as I said, you get to play more games, which would be even better too.
Yeah, I mean, you were close to getting to Division 1. It was kind of, you were just in the middle at the end. Would you be in favour of going up to Division 1? Obviously, some people say it's too soon or it should harm the development of the team. You know, we're not ready yet. Others would say, you know, you have to play the better teams to improve as a team. So, like, where would you stand on that?
Yeah, I'd say we were quite unlucky not to go up this year in a sense. I think we threw 2 games away a little bit. The game we played against Cavan, we were well on top until maybe, I think they really only played for 15 minutes, and it was just blitzkrieg. Like, they just points from everywhere. So we kind of let that game slide, and then the Roscommon game was our worst performance of the year, where we really we didn't really turn up, and it was frustrating because being from Westmeath and being from Athlone in particular, obviously Athlone is half Westmeath, half Roscommon, and I've got schoolmates from Roscommon, so I'm sick of listening to them in a way, like, where they've always been the bigger fish in town. So that's been a little bit frustrating. So I was really looking forward to that game, and then completely underperformed, which was obviously a bit hard to take. And then Armagh, I actually had a mark from maybe 30 yards out, pretty much directly in front, and I missed it, which was obviously a big let off for Armagh. And I suppose it cost us the chance to go up. Having said that, do I think that we're ready for Division 1? Not quite yet. I think if we went up, we could perform quite well against the majority of the teams. But I would still see us going straight back down. And I think in terms of development, we probably need to stay really clear. But now this year coming, if the league was to go ahead this year, under normal circumstances, we would have been looking to get promoted now this year on the back of kind of like whatever, it's a 6 or 7 really, really strong performances. So yeah, I think if we went up this year, it would have been a little bit too early, and I think it would have caught us in the hat slightly. So I think in terms of development, you want to be as competitive and playing at a level where you're really competitive for as long as you can until you're ready to make that step. So yeah, I think another couple of years, if we keep progressing the way we are, ready for kind of, I suppose, battling for that Division 1 position.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, going back to Dublin, he did get Dublin in the first round of the championship last year, and of course, there was no qualifiers, so it was kind of a tough one for you.
Yeah, I suppose you see that fixture, and I think everyone knows then, like, look, this is now just about performance. Let's see if we can perform against them. And to a certain extent, I think we did. We lost by 11 points in the end, but we look back on that. There's definitely scores that we kind of let slide. That we could have done better on. And we conceded some scores that we wouldn't really be too happy with, which is, look, it happens in every game. But I think in terms of, I think we showed that we're like, we're not a million miles off being kind of like that next best team in Leinster. So I'd say between ourselves, Meath, Kildare, like, we're kind of, the three of us at the minute are really battling amongst ourselves to see who's kind of like best of the rest, I suppose. So yeah, no, when we played them in the championship, it was a bit frustrating because I suppose you're kind of know what's coming in a way. So it's just about trying to keep things tidy and be as competitive as you can for as long as you can. And I think everyone would say that we are to a certain extent. We didn't let Dublin score any goals, which is they're scoring goals in every game they play. Like, I can't remember the score in the final, but I know up until the final, the All Ireland final, we were the closest score difference to them, like with 11 points. So you have to, I suppose you have to look at these things like and take little positives out of it. Look, we still got better by 11 points, but you can kind of swing that to have a positive outlook too. Like, so.
Yeah, I mean, even the venue thing with Dublin, like, you played them in Portlaoise. Like, could they not even make more effort to, get in Mullingar? I don't know, was it a floodlights issue or television? I know it was at 7 o'clock, but I don't think Dublin, they played the sort of the neutral venue, if you like, the quarterfinals, but they haven't actually gone to a county's home ground.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the story of that is. I don't know why we could play it. Well, I suppose one of the reasons about Mullingar is the lack of floodlights, so you're not going to have it there at 7 o'clock. I as much as I like playing in Croke Park, I'm delighted that we didn't play them there because they're so good and such an open pitch. So I think the likes of say like Tullamore or Moore Park kind of like help us in that way because we can I suppose keep things a little bit tighter from that point of view. But yeah, look, I don't know what the story is with fixtures. I don't know who decides them. I don't know why Croke Park is sometimes not considered Dublin's home ground when they play 95% of their games there. Like most of their games that they should play in Croke Park should probably be in Parnell Park. So I don't understand a lot of that. But yeah, I can't really answer the question as to why we're not going down to the likes of Mullingar and that more often. But you never know. It might be it's been a strange year. It might go on and something might happen in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and then obviously from another sport, then AFL, you played a bit there for a few years. Like, how did it come about? How did it happen? Did you go on trials, or what happened to get the call, anyways?
Yeah, I actually had a kind of a few good years playing at home, and I went up with the international rules squad in 2015, and probably took a lot of confidence out of that from performing quite well in all the training games against, I suppose, the best players in the country. So um, once that happened, I kind of saw where my game was at. I spoke to, I just had just in, it was kind of a nothing conversation with Colin Begley, just we were in a food session, and he was speaking about Australia and his time there. And it just sounded like something I'd love to do. I've got like a cousin of mine plays professional soccer, one of my best mates is a professional rugby player. My brother was a professional rugby player, and I suppose professional sport is something that's been in my family, and something I've seen the kind of the ins and outs of it, and it was always a dream of mine to be a professional footballer in some aspect, and I was never like good enough to do it in like soccer or that, and I obviously can't do it in Gaelic, so this was kind of the best option. And I played rugby only for about 10, wasn't very good at it, so that was never going to be an option. So yeah, no, just this opportunity came, and I contacted Ray Connellan just about the combine that happens up in Dublin annually, and from there I tested quite well, and Ty invited me to join up with what's called the AIS Academy, which is a group of 18-year-olds who are getting ready to be drafted into the AFL next year. So I went and joined up with this academy. They were on a tour of America, and I met them in Florida. Myself, Dara Joyce from Kilkenny, and Killian McDade from Galway. And we spent 2 weeks in IMG Academy in Florida, which was a great experience. And we trained and got to meet a lot of kind of AFL recruiters, and I met the St Kilda recruiter. And at the time, they were looking for kind of fast, kind of tall, fast, athletic players, and my speed was, I suppose, one of my strongest suits, and it just suited them at the time to bring me over. And from there, that was, I think, January 2016, and I think went over in June 2016 for 3 weeks and signed a contract then, not long after. Out in November, so it all happened quite quickly in the space of kind of 6 or 8 months. It was a good couple of years and a good year kind of leading into it. So no, it was an enjoyable, I suppose, time in my life for me.
Yeah, was it a big decision at all? I mean, it's not like probably going over to the UK as maybe a soccer player, for instance. You see nearly Australia is like a whole new world. You feel isolated nearly. The time differences and everything. Like, did you have to consider it much, or are you saying I'm going?
Well, I suppose once the possibility came into my head, once I knew I was going to go to the combine in Dublin, I kind of had thought about the long-term goal, and for me, I wasn't ever going just to kind of do the testing and see how I got on. It was more of a case of, right, let's try and actually get a career out of this. So no, I thought about all that well in advance, and I knew, I suppose, the end game was moving to the other side of the world to play the sport. So I was quite happy to do it. There wasn't really much consideration other than kind of, I suppose, one thing I did have to keep in mind was that I was going to be leaving college, and whether I went there for 2 years or I went there for 10 years, if I wanted to come back and say finish off my college degree, I was then immediately putting myself behind all my peers, which is a little bit frustrating. And I suppose now, I'm sitting at my desk here now, I'm doing my lectures and stuff from UCD, and I suppose I'm looking at my friends who are all working, and that can be frustrating. But at the same time, it was something I was very aware of when I moved away, that I wasn't following the same path as say the likes of yourself and others who just go to university after school. So I've kind of delayed, I suppose, my education kind of 4 years really, which is can be frustrating, thinking, Jesus, will I ever get a degree? But no, look, it was in terms of sacrificing that for what I actually received over in Australia. It was well worth it. I made friends, like the best time ever. Like, loved playing a sport, loved the weather, the city. It was every way. That kind of like a little setback in terms of where I am now, as where at 18 when I thought I would be at 26.
Yeah, and even it's like, what's the differences really? I mean, you see bits and pieces of it on YouTube and that, but Is it completely different to Gaelic football? Is it like hard? Obviously, the ball is a big thing. Like you're learning nearly a brand new sport.
Yeah, you are, to be honest. I would say the only real similarities in the sport are how dynamic they are and the way I suppose it's a high intensity game that you need to be extremely fit to play, and you need to be coordinated in terms of your kind of hand to foot coordination for kicking. Um, the biggest I suppose learning curve for me was kicking the footy. That was I struggled with that really early on. I remember when I was in America, um, a man named Brad Johnson, a legendary footballer over there, with a team called the Western Bulldogs. He played over 300 games, like superstar. I remember this guy, like the best of the best, and he's dealing with these 18-year-olds who are going on to be the best of the best. And then there was like three pasty Irish kids there with him. And the two, Killian and Darren, actually, they took to the kicking quite well over there. I would struggle a little bit. So I remember Brad taking me outside and teaching me just how to hold the ball and then how to actually drop it. So I walked around the car park for hours, literally not kicking the ball, just holding it so that it would drop, land on the point, and bounce straight back up. So then you're dropping it straight and you'll kick it straight. So that was a big thing for me. That was quite difficult to get the hang of. But I kind of got there in the end, and I know I developed quite a good kick after that. Then the setups, the shape of the game, the size of the field. It's a little bit more stop-start than Gaelic football, but far higher intensity. Like when you're running flat out. So it's definitely different. There's similarities there, but I'd say there's more differences now than similarities. To really get a I suppose a feel for how the game flows and stuff like that. That was quite hard, but you're surrounded by like top class coaches and top class players, and they do help an awful lot. Whether it be after a session, they sit down and look at video of a training session with you and they'll talk you through it, or whether it be you're out in the field and you're getting screamed at from someone because you're in the wrong position, and Jesus, you learn very quickly when you've made a mistake out there and there's some fella breathing out the back of your neck telling you that you've made a balls or something. So it's a steep learning curve, but it's an enjoyable.
Yeah, and even training-wise, compared to the AFL to now inter-county Gaelic football, will there be much differences? Obviously, it's a professional sport, AFL, and Gaelic football is obviously amateur, but it has the professional aspects. Like, what training regimes? What's the differences?
Yeah, I suppose the best way to say it is Gaelic football is as professional as Gaelic football can be without being a full-time sport.
Yeah.
There's probably not another minute that could be dedicated to being a senior intercounty footballer with a top county. So from that point of view, Gaelic is flying. But it's still, in terms of hours put into it, it's still nothing compared to what happens over in Australia or in other professional sports. Purely because you're getting paid to be there, and you have time to commit to the sport because it's your job. So like you might arrive into training at 7 a.m. to do a weight session, and you'd have like your breakfast and stuff at the club, and that brings you up to about 9 o'clock for your first team meeting, and then from the team meeting you might break into backs, forwards, and midfielders. You have another meeting, and then you'll go down and start getting of training, which might be movement prep, warming up. Hop on the bike, you do some band work, you do some mobility work, get your ankles strapped, see a physio if you have to, and then you're in the field for maybe 2 to 3 hours, depending on the time of year. You're back in for food, for another weight session, or maybe a cross training session, which might be boxing or swimming or bike. So your day is full. You get in at 7, and often days you don't leave till kind of 5 or 6. So it's a long day. It's really tiring, but in terms of like the county Gaelic scene and the AFL scene, Gaelic is as close as you get. The time that goes into a professional sport, no matter what it is an awful lot more than what guys who haven't ever been involved would think it is.
Yeah, would it be a disappointment that it didn't quite last, probably longer than you thought, or looking back on it, what would be your thoughts on the whole experience in Australia?
Absolutely. I mean, like no more than when I went for the trials, I wanted to make a career out of it. So when I moved over there, I wanted to play games in the AFL. Unfortunately, I only played VFL football. So no, definitely a disappointment in that point of view. I think I said it before initially that I wouldn't consider it a full success if I never played AFL, and I didn't. So from that aspect, I definitely am disappointed. I certainly believe that I was good enough to play, and I think if things worked out differently with the club I was at, I could have played some AFL football, which is a bit of a shame. But like that's just a professional sport too. Like these chances come your way and you take them, and but sometimes they don't. And there's nothing you can do from that point of view. I'd be very happy with that with myself in the terms that I know I gave kind of everything to it. Like I don't have any regrets in terms of did I let myself down in any way. No, I don't believe so. So that's kind of a nice, I suppose, like it's a nice way to be able to live with yourself, thinking you gave that the best shot you could and it just didn't work out. So from that point of view, I'm fine. I've no real regrets. But yeah, no, it was definitely all very positive. I probably would have liked another couple of years out there, maybe. Like if I got 4 or 5 years, that would have been the ideal for me. Especially at my age, I would have always wanted to come home. So if I got to kind of 26, 27, and I'm still there, I would have been through. As I said, it's professional sport, and if things aren't working out, you get shown the door very quickly, which is a bit of a shame. But what can you do?
Yeah, and I mean, looking ahead to 2021, we don't know when the football will start. Maybe April, May time with the league. I mean, what is the aim this year? Probably with Division 2, you're back in there, and maybe avoid Dublin in the Leinster Championship.
Yeah, well, I suppose it depends now. As I said, there is talk at the minute of what's going to happen with the format of the championship structure. So if that changes, the league could end up getting scrapped or something. So we don't really know how things are going to work out yet. If you were to ask me this in a normal year and under normal conditions, I would say the goal for Westmeath is to, at the very minimum, retain Division 2 status, and like we would be expecting to be pushing for promotion. So that would be what we're thinking on into a normal league campaign now this time of year. And then for championship, yeah, I suppose avoid Dublin for as long as you can. And and even at that, you just want it for championship. You just want to be you want to perform well. And I think for a team like Westmeath, where we're not world beaters, we're kind of like, I suppose, a promising team with like a bit of potential. We would just, from our own point of view, we want to make sure that we're consistent and that our performances kind of reflect our talent and our ability. So we'd like our poor games to improve, so that our level, our worst level, is kind of like, it's not down here, it's a little bit higher, and then our best, is still up here. So we just want to become more consistent, and I think that's what all kind of Division 2 and kind of those kind of upcoming teams are really aiming for. It's just consistency in performances.
Brilliant, Ray. Thanks very much for coming on, and best of luck with the year ahead.
No worries, thanks a million, man.